How's it going, y'all? My name is Doe, and today's video is going to be all about cells. So over the past few days, I've been talking about armor and weapons to craft throughout Dauntless, but now it's time to discuss what to put in those armor and weapons to make them even better, and that's going to be cells. Cells in their basic form are pretty much a way to augment your gear to give you more perk bonuses, and they come in 3 different rarities. +1, which is green, +2, which is blue, and +3, which is purple. And I also want to stress the importance of knowing that cells can go up to a perk bonus of +6. Anything past +6 is not effective whatsoever. You can have up to 27 of one perk, I think it's like Aetheric Attunement, but doing that is not beneficial because anything past +6 does not help you. So that is the basic functionality of a cell, but now it's time to discuss how to actually get cells, and then past that I'll be discussing which cells are good and which cells you can turn into Aether Dust, which is also known as salvaging. Getting cells can be done in a couple of ways, and one of the best ways is just to play the game. So you can get cells from doing hunts and completing them. At the end of hunt screen you'll see if you got cells or not. You can get up to +1s and +2s from doing this, and so far I've gotten 3 +1s in one hunt. And as an added bonus you actually get cell cores, which contain cells, from doing your masteries. And to view your masteries, go to N on the keyboard or go to options and then go to masteries on the Xbox or PS4 and then go to the reward section. Once you're there, you can view all the rewards for doing your masteries, and you'll see you get a lot of cores for doing so. And for anyone unaware of what a core is, they basically just give you cells. Bronze gives you mostly 2, a silver gives you 3, and gold gives you, I think, 4 to 5. And the rarity is dependent on the core as well. But in some cases, you can get blues from bronzes, purples from silvers, and you can get 2 purples and a gold. It just depends. And the nice thing is, even once you've done your masteries and get all your rewards, you can actually prestige weapons to get silver cores. And the way you prestige your weapon is by crafting to +10 and then playing with it until you get 4500 XP for that weapon. And then after you prestige it, if you get 4500 XP, you'll get a silver core every single time you do this. Up to this point, I've shown you how to get cells, but those cells are actually random. So now it's time to show you how to get the cells you really want, which is done through the cell vendor, which is also called the middleman. In brief, the middleman is a place to fuse cells to get better cells. You can also use it to buy cells with either platinum or Aether Dust, which I really suggest not buying with platinum because you don't have to. Just dust the cells you don't want to, and I will be discussing what cells to dust here very shortly. But if you do want to buy anything off the middleman or in the game in general, use code OhDough at checkout. Helps me out, I'd appreciate it. But again, you don't have to buy anything from the middleman. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to what cells are actually good in Dauntless. Right now in Dauntless, there are 5 cell types, and I'll be discussing them in the order in which I view their importance, and the first will be power. So for power cells, you have Overpower, Rage Hunter, Aether Hunter, Rage, Knockout King, and Sharpened. You also have Pacifier and Deconstruction. Overpower is 70% extra damage versus Stagger Behemoths, and a stagger is counted as either breaking apart, triggering an actual stagger with stagger damage, or by interrupting a behemoth during an unstable attack with a boop. Rage Hunter is up to 40% extra damage versus behemoths when they're enraged, and an enrage is basically when a behemoth is red, which some behemoths don't have good enrages, and that's why a cell called Aether Hunter can be better in very few cases. So Aether Hunter is a cell that gives you up to 50% damage versus Aether Charged behemoths, which in this case that would be really good against Shroud and Riftstalker, because those 2 behemoths do not have very good enrages, but their Aether mode is up pretty often. Rage can give you up to 25% damage when you're below 50% health, and this can be very helpful for anyone that takes a lot of damage, because if you're always low health, this cell will be active pretty often if you're taking a lot of damage. Knockout King is an okay cell. It's more of a complementary cell than anything, and it gives you up to 30% extra stagger damage, and if you're at +6, if you roll through an attack, you get 100% increased stagger on the next swing. So it's not crazy good, but it is used as a complementary cell in some builds. And then you have Sharpened, which gives you up to 30% part damage, and rolling through an attack gives you up to 100% part damage for the next swing. And then after that, you have Pacifier and Deconstruction, which I would suggest dusting, because they are not good cells at all in my opinion. The next cell type will be Technique, and the cells in this category will be Predator, Cunning, Evasive Fury, Wild Frenzy, Molten, Adrenaline, Acidic, Savagery, Weighted Strikes, Bladestorm, and then Merciless and Barbed. So Predator gives you up to 35% increased damage, and if you take damage, you lose the bonus for up to 15 seconds. So if you aren't good at dodging, I would not suggest this cell. Cunning at +6 will give you a 15% chance to do a critical strike, and that will give you a 100% increased damage. And that damage is further increased by having other damage perks in your build. So in general, Cunning is not a good cell unless you have other perks to basically supplement its damage. So having like Rage Hunter or Pred in the build itself will make Cunning hit for a lot more. Alright, now it's time for some attack speed. So Evasive Fury gives you 25% attack speed for 16 seconds after dodging through an attack. So this cell at +6 can be maintained pretty much the whole time if you're dodging through attacks the way you're supposed to. The next cell will be Wild Frenzy, which works exactly like Rage does, and that is being below 50% health will give you 25% attack speed in this case. And this cell works pretty good with, I don't know, Rage, because they're the exact same threshold, so they have a really good synergy. For Molten, dealing damage generates 3 Molten Hearts on a 16-second cooldown, granting immunity to burning and 20% increased attack speed and a pretty odd number of movement speed, I don't know what it is, and each orb you pick up gives you a increased duration towards Molten, which is 8.5 seconds per orb, and the duration stacks pretty high. You can pretty much get to like 4 minutes I think, and just keep stacking it as much as you can. But for Molten to last long, your teammates can't steal it, so that's going to be a factor in using Molten or not. Adrenaline will give you 1.8% increased damage for every 10 stamina missing. And by the way, your base stamina will be 100, so this gives you 18% damage with no other modifiers, such as stamina. So it's not the best cell in the world, but it can be helpful on the Warpike or the Chain Blades, which are very stamina draining weapons. Acidic will convert 50% of your part damage to wound damage, and at +6 will give you 20% part damage, which by the way, never use this cell at +6. Only use Acidic at +3. Never ever ever do +6, because right now it does not actually help you, and it's a waste. And I actually only use Acidic to wound faster with the Warpike. If I'm playing like a 4-man, using Acidic will help me wound faster, but again, only use +3 Acidic. And speaking of the Warpike, the next cell will be Savagery, which at +6 will give you 100% increased damage versus wounded parts. And Savagery and Acidic work really well together because Acidic reduces your part damage, which makes it so the parts you wound will last longer, and Savagery gives more damage, so basically they have a very good synergy, and that makes it really nice to use on the Warpike if you want to keep those wounds lasting longer to do more damage to them with Savagery. Weighted Strikes. You get 40 flat stagger damage on hit, and you also get 400 stagger damage after dodging through an attack, which both are not that crazy. But the good part about this cell is that your range swings and missiles will interrupt unstable behemoth attacks. So that makes it so the Chain Blades can actually interrupt, because without this cell, Chain Blades cannot interrupt in their current state. It's just not possible. Now, for the cells I would actually salvage Bladestorm, Merciless, and Barbed. Bladestorm gives you flat part damage, Merciless gives you wound damage versus Stagger Behemoths, which is kind of like Pacifier, but it's just as bad. And Barbed will give you flat wound damage, which I really don't like cells to give you flat damage. I much prefer percent damage based cells, and that's why I really like Acidic way more than Barbed. The next cell type will be Utility, and in this section we have Aetheric Attunement, Conduit, Energized, Lucent, Medic, and Aetheric Frenzy, Vampiric, Aetherborn, and Stunning Vigor. So for these cells, Aetheric Attunement will give you up to 50% increased lantern duration from attacks, which affects your hold to cast, and on top of that, it will reduce the cooldown on your instant cast for your lantern. Conduit will give you 25% attack speed for 8 seconds for using your hold to cast on your lantern, which can be built really quickly using Aetheric Attunement, so these two cells synergize really nicely. Energize will give you 40% increased charge rate for your weapons, and that will affect the Warpike, Sword, Axe, and Chainblade meters. Lucent will turn your flask into a heal over time, which will heal for 20% more health over 20 seconds, and as an added bonus you'll be getting a lantern charge for your hold to cast for the duration of those 20 seconds. Alright, now it's time for Medic. When reviving an ally, they are healed for an additional 40% health, and increases the revive speed by 66%, also it grants a 300 health shield for 20 seconds after reviving an ally at +6. This cell will be very good in Heroic Plus once they fix the whole having 3 syringes thing, because there should only be 1 syringe in Heroic Plus, but most of the time you get 3. Once that's fixed, this cell will actually be very good for anyone that's trying to learn that fight, and learn the fights in Heroic Plus, and play with friends or just randoms, because this cell will make reviving a lot easier, and you're going to need to revive a lot during Heroic Plus. And now it's time for the cells I suggest dusting, which will be Aetheric Frenzy, Vampiric, Aetherborn, and Stunning Vigor. Vampiric and Stunning Vigor will heal you for 200 health whenever you wound or stagger Behemoth, and it's just not that great because there are better cells later on I'll be discussing. And also Aetherborn, it's not the worst cell in the world, and if you're learning the game, it can be very useful because you get more healing from the Aether Vent. So if you're learning the game, and it's the only cell you have, this is actually not a bad choice. And I would suggest it over, Vampiric or Stunning Vigor and Aetheric Frenzy by a lot. But still, the other cells I've listed are much better, especially once you're more comfortable with the game. Alright, the fourth cell type I'll be discussing will be the mobility cells, which are Conditioning, Swift, Agility, Fleet-footed, Endurance, and Evasion and Nimble. Conditioning at +6 will give you 30 stamina regeneration, which this cell I only suggest going to +3. It's kind of like Acidic in that sense. because going to +6 is overkill. But the uses for conditioning are going to be for the sword, chain blades, warp pike, axe. Pretty much most weapons will use this cell really nicely. The only weapon I suggest not trying to put the cell on will be repeaters. On repeaters, you don't want to use this, and you'd actually rather use the next cell, which will be swift. Swift will increase your movement speed while your weapon is sheathed by up to 30%, and if you're at +6, it also affects your other teammates if they're close to you. And the range is kind of small. It's kind of like a Lucio speed boost, but it's really, really small. And I really hope they increase the width of it because it would be a lot more fun to use if it could actually affect your teammates more reliably. Agility will reduce your dodge stamina roll cost by up to 70%. And this works really well with the chain blades because it actually reduces your dash cost stamina drain as well. So on chain blades you can dash for days, and dashing on chain blades is a pretty fast way to get around. So 70% less stamina cost to your dash is really nice on chain blades. Endurance. Increase max stamina by 100. So the only reason why this cell is not dustable in my opinion is because it works really well with adrenaline. It increases your max stamina by double, which makes adrenaline, twice as good. That's the only reason. Now for my dustable cells in this category, I'd go with evasion, nimble, and fleet-footed. So evasion increases dodge and vulnerability windows by 42%. This cell is just not necessary. You get much more use out of the other cells, and I think this cell is more of a crutch than anything. Nimble. Gain 35 stamina after dodging through an attack. So conditioning is just better in every single case. Nimble's not a good cell because you actually have to dodge through an attack. Not dodge, but dodge through an attack, which makes this cell not very good. And finally we have fleet-footed, which is basically a budget swift cell. So following a roll, not a dodge, a roll, movement speed is increased by 35% for 3 seconds. So it's just better to run swift because if you put away your weapons, swift is active for, however long you want to be active for. Once you sheath your weapons, it's active. Once you unsheath them, it's inactive. Okay, we're finally to the last cell type, which is defense cells. And for this we'll have Iceborne, Sturdy, Tough, 9 Lives, Guardian, and Fireproof, Shellshock Resist, Insulated, Warmth, Bloodless, and Fortress, and Assassin's Vigor. There's a lot of them, man. Alright, starting off with Iceborne, when under 50% health, you are granted 30% decreased damage taken, and if you're at +6, while Iceborne is active, you'll get 8% lifesteal that cannot be healed beyond 50% health. So this is a low life cell that actually heals you for being low life, and also reduces damage taken once you're below a certain threshold, which is 50% health. And this cell is kinda super strong. I'm hoping it gets nerfed again because it's enforcing really bad playstyles in my opinion. I think it's fun to use on a weapon like the axe, but other than that, it's kind of a crutch. Anyway, the next cell will be Sturdy, which prevents being staggered, and it's on a 15-second cooldown once you are staggered. So this can make getting off combos for certain weapons easier on yourself if you want to, just go ham and mash those buttons to get that combo off. So this can work really well on a hammer or the axe if you want to use it. Now the next cell is Tough, and this will give you 500 extra health, and it also increases healing received from all sources by 50%. And this cell is a pretty good cell for beginners, but it can be abused if you're using the Hunger Sword, because the Hunger gives you lifesteal, and if you're increasing that lifesteal by 50%, it gets pretty crazy. You can pretty much just stand still and not dodge anything. So yeah, if you want to abuse that, you can. But anyway, next cell is going to be 9 Lives, which I don't really use, but it's a good cell nonetheless. And this cell will give you a 20% chance to have incoming damage, and the first time you would die or be knocked out, you stay up and heal for 400 health and become empowered for 10 seconds, which I'm not sure what the empowerment is. I've actually never asked anyone, but I'm guessing it's just damage. And then you have Guardian, which is only useful if you're using the Rockfall weapons. I know it can affect the Skarn's Defiance Lantern, but don't waste this cell for getting that little small bonus, because if you're using a Skarn weapon which gives you shield for doing damage, then Guardian can be really nice. If not, don't use it. Anyway, Guardian will give 60% of the shield applied to yourself to your nearest ally for 15 seconds. So if you're using a Skarn weapon, it's good. If you're only using the Skarn's Defiance or Fortress, don't do it. Now, the next 5 cells can be useful if you want to, so I'm not saying to salvage them off the bat, but the first cell is Fireproof, which is immunity to fire if you're at +6, and that is very helpful on, Hellion. It can be helpful on Charog and Remain. It's a very good cell that you can use if you want to. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. And Shell Shock is helpful on Deadeye Cool Shot because of the explosion from its quills, because it gives you immunity to that. Insulated is good on Shock Giant Zyga because it's immunity to shock status, and it also prevents being knocked back and damaged when hitting the electrified fields. So if you want to use that, you can as well. Now Warmth is good on Frostback Pangar because if you're getting frozen by its little icicles, it'll prevent that freeze effect happening. And if you're also fighting Boreas, you want to be chilled, it also prevents the chilled status as well. And finally, you'll have Bloodless, which is immunity to the wound status and the crippling wound status, which are inflicted by a couple behemoths, mostly Richtal Asher, Karabac are the ones that come to mind. But anytime you have like a broken heart in your top left window, that is a wound status. So those 5 cells can be dusted if you want to. It's just more of a case-by-case basis if you want to use it. But the last 2 cells I never use, which are Fortress and Assassin's Vigor. So Fortress will grant you a 100 health shield for not taking damage for 10 seconds, and then Assassin's Vigor will heal you for 300 whenever you break apart. And I think that Iceborne is just better than both of these, just in general. I think that Iceborne, or using a Rockfall weapon, will basically trump both these cells just off the bat. And for anyone still watching, because this video is super long, I would suggest using any cell you can in the beginning. The exception will be Acidic, because that cuts your part damage in half, and having your part damage cut in half is not a good thing when you're trying to break parts in the beginning. And with that, that's the end of this video, guys. I really hope it was helpful, because I tried so hard to figure out a good way to display the information, so hopefully it came across properly. And guys, if you liked the video, leave a like. Maybe consider subscribing to Channel OhDough's content, because that's all I really do here for now, because the game is really fun for me to play, and I enjoy teaching people the ropes of the game. It's fun for me. And speaking of teaching folks, kinda, I stream on Twitch at OhDough. It's my name on a lot of platforms, but I'm live on Twitch pretty much every Wednesday through Saturday, 7 p.m. Central to 11 p.m. Central, playing Dauntless, teaching folks how to play the weapons, and just answering questions, and just having a good time. So if you want to, check me out there. And one last thing, if you want to use my creator code in the Epic Games Store, it's just OhDough. If you're buying anything, if you want to support me, that's a really good way to do it. And seriously, thank you to everyone that does that. It's very, very helpful and humbling, honestly. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.